All right, welcome everybody to the December Accelerant Research Virtual Insights Mini Conference. My name is Bill McDowell. I am president at Accelerant Research. I'm going to get us started for today's festivities. If you have joined our virtual conferences in the past, welcome back. If you're joining for the first time, welcome. If you have been here before, you kind of know the drill, what these are all about, but I'm going to just give a quick overview and then we're going to jump into some content. So Accelerant Research, my firm, we host and have for the past several years, ever since COVID, as a matter of fact, hosted these virtual insights conferences. Our tendency has been to do these a couple of times, maybe 3 times a year, basically set up a day-long set of back-to-back webinars. But we are listening to what the people want and also trying to offer up this content on a bit more frequent, a bit more bite-sized basis. So starting today, we're going to introduce, try to do these on a monthly basis, but these more mini bite-sized virtual insights webinar type conferences. But format the same. Accelerant Research will host. We bring in good speakers, talk about some interesting content, and current research and insights events, and hopefully give each other the opportunity to network together, get to know one another, maybe learn something from other research geeks. First, I'm going to go through some quick ground rules. These are the rules that we tend to operate by. We are, and continue to remind each other that we are at the mercy of tech. Accelerant Research is a research agency hosting a webinar, so we're not an event planning or conference organization. So, if something were to crap out tech-wise, if internet glitch hits us, please be patient. It's rare that these things happen. We're pretty good with reliability of the Zooms of the world, but you never know. So also reminder, just because this is a virtual conference, virtual event, just, don't be too emboldened by the anonymity of the internet. Try to be respectful of one another, of our presenters. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't engage with one another, network to the extent possible. Yes, we definitely want that. That's the whole point of getting together, sharing knowledge. But I'll do so respectfully, excuse me. Like I said, conference, do try to network with one another. We're not in person, but we'll try to, simulate that to the extent possible. So if you're in Zoom, if you're on YouTube, take advantage of the chat functions that are ahead of you. If you're in Zoom Q&A, ask questions to presenter, definitely, keep us posted, engage with one another, right? If you're on the socials, grab hashtag ARVIC, Twitter, LinkedIn, and, network with one another to the extent possible. Like I said, these are going to be happening on a more frequent basis. We've got our next few events stacked up, which I will quickly go through, and then we'll jump into some content. Next month, January, we've got an interesting webinar coming your way on the new business of UX research. We've got a March full day conference already scheduled for the 27th. Probably sprinkle in a February event as well. So, if you haven't already, please do go to accelerantresearch.com, resources, conferences, register, be on the lookout for additional information. But today's event is going to be a webinar by Accelerant's own Julie Pabich. She's going to be talking to us about battling bots and other online predators, a subject that if you're in research insights and you're not paying attention to, you definitely need to be, because it's out there, it's a problem, it's something that we as an industry need to be thinking about, conscious of, and kind of taking a village to battle this thing. So I'm going to get out of the way. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to let Julie do her thing and take it away.
All righty. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Bill, for the intro. I'm excited to get started here. I guess I just need to share my presentation and make sure that it is in slideshow mode. You guys see that?
Good.
All right. All right. Well, thanks so much for coming today. I have a lot of content to cover. I hope that you find this very interesting. It was great putting it together. I learned a lot, and definitely want to impart what I've heard and also what I've lived. So I've been in market research for a really long time. I've worked at Nielsen for over a decade. I've been in business to business research with Johnson Controls. I had my own agency for a while. So basically, I've run the gamut. And so hopefully, like I said, I can impart some of my knowledge. But I also relied on some of the folks that I know to interview to talk about some of the things that are going on in the industry that I think, are very important. We need to shine some light on what's going on here. So first, let me just give you the agenda. So I'm going to talk really briefly just about, the industry in general, what's going on with the panel companies, because a lot's changed, especially, in the last 20 years, obviously. There are a lot of threats. There are human threats and there are non-human threats. And we're going to talk about all of those. The vast majority of what I'm going to be talking about today is going to be in this third section in defenses. So I've got all kinds of tips and tricks and techniques that we're going to cover, and you can try them all in order to try and, make sure that we keep the integrity of our data and our research intact. And then finally, we're going to talk about some inventive incentives, because as we know, the whole reason there's all this problem is because of the money, right? So follow the money. Let's make it not so easy for people to just take that Amazon gift card. Let's, figure out other ways that we can incent participants, people that are willing to give their opinion to us without making it so, attractive to the bad guys. So let's get started. All right, so what's going on with market research data? Why is it so important? It's really super important to the whole industry and also for anybody that relies on market research, right, to make good decisions. We want to talk to human people, right? Exactly. We do not want to talk to bots. I think it's, absurd that we're having to have to deal with this, but it's the fact of reality. And so, we're going to deal with it, and we're going to talk about that today and how to get away from those non-human people. We want to ensure that when we're providing data to people, they're making good decisions, not bad. I mean, I've read, that there's just 30% maybe of the research data that comes back is from bots. I mean, that's just totally unacceptable. And we don't want our clients, and we don't want your internal clients or, people trying to create new products or, deal with customers or, increase satisfaction or run an ad. We don't want those decisions to be based on fraudulent data. So it's really important the data is, equality. Also, we're wasting a lot of money on giving incentives to these bad guys. So let's stop doing that. I mean, if you think about a survey, 1,000 people, and maybe if 30% of them are bad, that's 300. If you're giving them each, $25, I mean, do the math. That's wasted money down the drain. And not only are you getting bad data, but you're just throwing money away. And then finally, it's the reputation of our industry. I've been doing market research for a long time, and I really, really love to help clients and help people make great decisions based on research. I know it works. So, anytime there's something that's going to affect that, I take that kind of personally. And all of us should, want to keep the integrity of our reputation intact. So, that's sort of my take on why I think the quality is so important. And what's going on with the industry in general? As I mentioned, I had been at Nielsen for over a decade. I worked in syndicated research side, and we did literally 160,000 surveys a year for some of our syndicated research projects in order to create derivative products, but we also sold the market research data. Back then, that was when people were just changing from caddy or phone surveys over to online surveys. Bots weren't such a problem at the time, but there were some panel companies that were up and coming. We used SSI. They were a great partner for us. But over the years, you can see that there are a lot of panel companies that have come and gone. There's been a massive amount of mergers and acquisitions. I mean, companies that existed 5 years ago don't exist anymore. And when I reached out to my colleagues and talked to people that have also been in the industry for 20, 30 years, they're just saying, wow, it's like night and day from, how it used to be. There's a lot fewer proprietary panels. I mean, We have one at Accelerant Research, and it takes a lot of care and feeding in order to keep the quality up. But a lot of people have decided, it's just not worth it to do it. So they're throwing in with some of these big guys. That, tends to be a problem because then the quality is diminished. There's a lot of these big panel companies also that provide sort of, hey, click this button and tell us, do you want men, age this to this? What was the income? We'll send you your data. You don't even talk to like a human being anymore when you're ordering your panel data. So that's got to affect quality as well, because you don't really have a partner helping you sort of make good decisions. There's also different kind of sample sources that are out there now, these river samples, which, are basically you're giving your survey to somebody who just happens to be surfing on the web, and there isn't a lot of control over who that person is. There are synthetic panels now that are based wholly on, predictive outcomes. And obviously we have this new active threat of survey bots and other cheaters that are just trying to take advantage of us. So let's just keep in mind that the industry has changed, and we need to know what's going on in order for us to be able to really defend against some of these bad actors. So who are the threats? I've kind of put these three up together because they're more like the systematic or systemic problems that we have. Survey bots, huge. We're going to keep talking about that. Click farms, let's talk about those. Click farms usually are in foreign countries, but there are some in the US. It's a bunch of people in front of their computers. Sometimes they're all in one room, sometimes they're working remotely. And this is a problem. I mean, if you start looking and doing some research, you'll be able to see articles. And I found a great one on Green Book where you can go and look at it. It's from 2019, where these really inventive guys went out and figured out that there was some bad data going on. So they investigated further, and they found out there was a click farm in China. And in that click farm, this guy was actually charging his students $150 a pop in order to learn how to take surveys to make money. So, that's a huge problem. So you've got humans taking the surveys, but they're trying to do it for the money only, and obviously they're not qualified respondents, right? Another thing that's come up, fairly recently are these things called ghost completes or redirect fraud, and we're going to talk about a little bit more about those in a second. But these are what I consider to be kind of the overall sort of systemic issues that are real threats to our surveys and to our data. There are also human threats, right? So we've got these guys that are professional survey takers. So every panel that's out there, they sign up. They want to make sure they're taking as many surveys as possible to get as many incentives as possible. Now, they might qualify for some of the surveys, and they might be legit in some regard, but my take is that, if they're professionally taking these surveys, they're just trying to figure out, how to get the money. Same with cheaters and what we used to call gamers. So they're trying to game the system, right? These are people who will get an invitation to a survey and then try to figure out, like, what are they trying to get? So they're trying to guess what the right answers are. So they're, just as bad, right? Because they don't really qualify for the survey. So we don't want to talk to them. And then finally, you've got people that are legitimately trying to take the survey, but maybe they're distracted. Maybe they're just lazy. They want to get through the survey fast. So, they're as much of a problem. So these are what I consider to be kind of some of the human threats. So what are we going to do about all this? As I mentioned, most of the time I'm going to be talking about these defense strategies, and that's what we're going to talk about the rest of our time together here. And basically, I broke it down into three sections. So you've got this pre-survey, in the survey, and then post-survey, before, during, and after, right? But I like to consider them to be sort of like deny, trap, and then toss them. So first, we're going to deny them even getting into the panel or getting into the survey. So we're going to put up defenses, and we're going to try and keep them out totally, right? That would solve the problem. But people get through. So then we're going to create some traps, and we're going to try and see any of those bad actors try to get in, or any of those bots. We're going to put some traps in our survey in order to catch them. And then if they still make it through, then we're going to find them at the end, and we're going to toss them out. So deny, trap, and toss. And that's how we're going to structure the rest of this presentation. All right, so let's talk about denying. As I mentioned, there are lots of survey panels out there, and the best thing to do is try and not even have bad actors or survey bots get in the first place. There are automatic ways to do that. There are some manual processes, and then, as I mentioned, I'm going to talk about these ghost completes. So let's talk about automatic ways. Now, there are several software products out there that are bot detectors, and these aren't just for research. I mean, there's bot detection for other problems that bots are causing in advertising and other things as well. But for the purposes of our discussion today, we're going to talk just about the survey bot detection. Here are three on the left that came up when I was doing some research. And they do a lot of things, right? So they have like behavioral things. They look at how you're using your computer, how fast you're typing, things like that. There's also what we call like fingerprinting. So they're trying to ID where the technical stuff is coming from. And so that can be very helpful. There are also challenges, and we're going to talk about some of those techniques, and they're using them as well to try to keep people out of their panels. There's pattern recognition, so you can sort of see when people are doing certain things, that that's probably not a legitimate respondent. And then finally, one of the things they can do is they can look at your open ends and tell you if that content in that open end actually had been translated from a foreign language. So that can come in handy too. So that's some of the ways that the bot software can help. But there's also a fair amount, I feel, of manual intervention, because with the software, I've heard people say they've had to use like 2 software programs in order to clean up their data. I've heard people say they've used the software and still they find duplicates when they do the manual intervention. So, none of the techniques I'm going to tell you are sort of a silver bullet. It's all multiple techniques that are going to need to happen. But just know that if you're using one of those software products, or if you are hiring a panel that uses one, you'll want to also find out if they're doing any kind of manual intervention afterward to ensure that they're really scrubbing the data. But let's talk about some of the manual processes now. So obviously, one of the things you can do is look for duplicate IP addresses. You can filter out any bad email addresses, names, phone numbers, like phone numbers with 3 digits instead of 10. You can look at geography. There's oftentimes in the survey software, you can see the longitude and latitude, and you can sort of match that up with where people say they're from. So that is helpful. On our panel, we do encourage people to refer other people. And so, that's a great way for us to get more panelists that are qualified. But, if we find that there's one person that's referring like 50 people, that might be a flag that we want to check on. And then, of course, we've got our CAPTCHA. So let's talk about CAPTCHA. All right, so CAPTCHA, everybody's seen them, right? Everybody is looking for for stoplights, bicycles, motorcycles, right? Because really what we're doing is we're helping all the driverless cars out as part of that process. I did find these couple of other CAPTCHAs that I thought were super cute, and I wanted to pull one into this presentation, but I didn't know which one because they're both cute, right? So I sent out both of these in a poll to decide which one would be better. And actually, within our company, all the salespeople picked the muffin, all of the operations folks picked the bread. So I don't know, I just used them both. I thought they were cute. But let's talk about CAPTCHA, right? So what's the pros to using it is that it does capture like simple bots, but it's definitely not bulletproof, especially after all of this time. I think they're on like CAPTCHA 4 or 5 now. They continue to make improvements because the bots are learning. Some of the cons to CAPTCHA are that, some humans are failing it and maybe they get frustrated. The other thing is that the more sophisticated bots can definitely pass these. And then I learned about something else that I sort of couldn't believe, but there are things called CAPTCHA farms. And here's 2. Here's some logos for 2, Depths by CAPTCHA and 2 CAPTCHA. And you can go on these websites and they literally say, all right, if you need one, you can set up an API interface with us. Tell us when you need to solve one, and for like $2 a day, we'll solve 10 of your captchas. So go figure. People just find the oddest ways to make money, but apparently they're doing this, so it's something you should probably know about. All right. What about these ghost completes? So this is also, I think, kind of a fairly new phenomenon. And basically what it is that you get a completed survey, but there's no data in it. You're like, wow, what's going on? How did this happen? Basically what happens is a bad actor finds your redirect link. So when you create a survey, say you're in a company and you need to hire a panel to host your survey. So you go into Qualtrics and you do all your programming and you say, hey, Mr. Panel Company, here's my redirect link. Go ahead and launch this on your site. Well, what happens is some bad actor gets a hold of that link and they're able to change the coding on it so it looks like it's completed, but there's no data in it. So all they're trying to do is get the complete and then get the incentive. And so, that's bad, obviously. And so one way you can protect yourself is just have the panel company actually program your survey for you. That way there's no link at all to be stolen. And if you don't want to do that and you want to continue to program your own survey, what you can do is encrypt your links or, have a direct, link to the panel company. So there's no link to steal. So, all right. So that's how we kind of keep them out of the pool to begin with. But if that doesn't work, and history is showing us right now it's not working. As I said, there's like 30% people are telling me in the industry of bad survey responses when they launch a survey through a panel. I've heard as high as 50%. That's often an answer I get. And I've even heard 70%, which is absolutely unacceptable. So obviously, bad actors are getting into the panel, so we have to do something else. So the second step, remember I told you we're going to deny, then we're going to trap. So let's talk about like 10 ways we can trap these guys. I'm not going to read these because we're going to go through them. All right, so the first thing you can do is you can create, whoops, sorry, I missed one. The first thing you can do is you can hide the topic of your survey. So when I worked at Johnson Controls, I did a lot of B2B research, and we were always, crafting these really great intro emails to people saying, oh, Mr. Construction Guy or Mr. Architect, you're so awesome. You're so great. We really need you to help us with this new product that we're going to launch. And it's this widget. And so basically what you're telling them while you're trying to, entice them to take your survey is that you're telling them the topic of the survey and you're telling them who we're trying to find, right? By doing that, though, we're also telling the bots what the topic of the survey is and who we're trying to find. So it's much smarter nowadays to actually just try to hide all that. So bury the lead, try to get them engaged, and try to get them into the screener before you sort of disclose too much. So that's the hidden topic technique. Oops. All right, the second technique is red herring questions. Now, red herring questions are basically kind of distraction questions or misleading questions. They're off topic from your survey, right? Here's an example. So what's your favorite Super Bowl snack? Buffalo wings, nachos, Ford Mustang, or potato skins? You can actually get a few bots this way, believe it or not. These are getting easier and easier, though, for the bots to solve. So you can still try putting them in, but the other thing that I read, which kind of astounded me, is that sometimes survey takers get offended by these questions, which really surprised me. So I guess, don't use too many. Hopefully people will understand that the reason we're using these techniques is because the bots are a problem, but just know, there are some people that have complained about them. Let's go to the next one. All right, trap questions. So I love these. Basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to create a logic thing to solve, and obviously humans can, because remember, even though they call it AI or artificial intelligence, they're not really intelligent, right? They're machine learners. So what we're going to do, and we're smarter than them, we're going to actually create these logic checks that they're going to fail probably. And so here's some examples. How much is 2 + 4? Put put the answer in as a word in the box. We can do this. We can say, hey, what are your initials, capital letters, put those in the box. A lot of bots will fail these. And then the other thing to do, and we've done this actually at Johnson Controls too, is you put in sort of some fake brands. Here's an example. What's your favorite streaming service? Netflix, Amazon Prime, Blockbuster, Hulu. Obviously, someone says Blockbuster, they're not probably human, or they weren't paying attention. All right, let's move on. Attention checks. These are to make sure that you can see that people are paying attention and they're not, wandering, or they haven't been distracted by another family member or what have you. These are actual questions, and you could make these questions that are relevant to your survey. But then what you do is you put in some notes in order to have the person know what to do. So in this example, what's your favorite Christmas song? These are legitimate answers, but we're telling people select response B to this question. So you're telling them, don't tell us your answer, just pick B, and that's one of the checks. The other thing you can do is just tell people don't answer the question at all. And I have personally used this and have caught about 5 to 10% of bots this way. So these are really great ways. And also, if someone's at their computer late at night and they're not really paying attention, it will also, flag those people. All right, what's the next one? Reverse and randomize. So this is a technique I don't use very much, but as I was doing my research, I found some other people find it helpful. You can just reverse the actual categories, and sometimes that trips people, trips the bots up, but you know what it also does? It trips up people. So, use these with caution, try them out, test them. The other thing you can do, and I'm sure everybody does this on those matrix questions where you have a whole bunch of statements, you could randomize it. So each person gets a different order of the questions and the attitudes that they're actually rating. And that's good for a couple of reasons, right? You don't want to have bias of people being really paying attention the first few attitudes and then kind of going, all right, I'm not going to read the rest. But also having them randomized also will potentially help you from having problems with some of the bots. So what's next? We've got honeypot questions. Okay, when I brought these up to a few people, nobody had ever heard of them. So I wanted to just tell you what they are, and you can decide if you want to use them or not. Basically, they're a hidden question. So what you do is you create in your survey a question with white text on a white background. And so what happens is a human can't read that, right? But an actual bot will read that question and try to answer it. So then you'll know that that's actually not a human being that answered that question. So you can do this through like this white text deal, but also I read on some of the survey software blogs you have. There's also information on how to actually code it, like in JavaScript, so you don't have to do the white text. The pros to this are that it's pretty simple and it does work. And it doesn't distract people. So if you can't read it, obviously you're not distracted by it. The cons are that the sophisticated bots are starting to pick up on this. And then also I read like if people are impaired and they have a screen reader, it might also pick them up. So that's probably low percentage of your respondents, but I just wanted to mention that as well. All right, what else? Mystery terminates. All right, here's another way that we're kind of helping the bots. When we put in like one of those red herring questions or a logic check or one of those where we're telling people to skip the question and then we terminate them immediately after that, they learn that they did something that they shouldn't have done and they got terminated. So we don't want to keep teaching these bots how to be better, right? What we want to do is we want to not let them know what question it was that got them booted out. So what you can do is you can, have all 10 screener questions, for example, flag the ones that they missed, and then just go ahead and boot them at the end so they don't know. Or you can just wait until the total end of the survey and say, sorry, you didn't make it. So, let's make it hard for them. Let's not make it easy. And then finally, we've got open-ended questions. These are great. Highly recommend, even if you've got a short survey, put in one open-ended question. You have some examples here I wrote, like, what do you like about brand X? What's your go-to brand? Or what are your top 3 brands? Why do you prefer this logo? What are you dissatisfied with? And in the post survey thing, I'm going to show you about how to analyze these to help you, but you can get a lot of information about how people are answering these. So I always recommend putting some open ends, even if you're not going to code it up for your report or anything. I really recommend that you put one in if you can. And then finally, test, right? So as I mentioned before, there's no silver bullet. So what I would recommend you do if you're writing your own survey, try these things out. If they work, great. If you're, making your survey respondents dissatisfied, take them out. But try these things and see if you have success. Keep track of where you're getting a lot of people that are falling down on these questions, and that'll help you understand the best ways to kind of keep curating your survey so they get better and better and better. So you're going to try the methods out, keep the stuff that works, get rid of the stuff that doesn't, refine it, and then launch your survey to the rest of your respondents. All right, so that was all the trap part. Now we're going to talk about actually tossing people out. As I mentioned, so we're going to deny, and then if they get through, we're going to trap them, and we're going to flag them. And then now we've got some work to do in terms of trying to clean up the data at the end. And I don't know if you're a data geek kind of like me, this is kind of the fun part. But I've got some techniques that we can use and things you can look at in order to look at the data at this point to see what things you can try and figure out that might indicate that you have a bad guy. All right, so let's go to the first one, speeders. So most of the survey software that's out there allows you to not only time the survey, the whole survey, but also an individual question. So if you have a big matrix question with a bunch of attitudinal statements, how long does it take like a normal person to actually read through all that and answer that? Create averages for how long it takes to do not only the whole survey, but big questions like that. And then you can find the outliers and go, well, it's impossible for someone to have, filled out this whole 15-minute survey in 3 minutes. So obviously that's probably a bot. So flag that person. The other thing to note is that there are different averages depending on whether or not someone filled it out on a PC or on a Mac. On a mobile device. So, keep that in mind too. You might want to have two different averages so that you can, make sure that you're comparing apples to apples. Okay, the second thing. So straight liners and pattern makers. So straight liners are where someone just goes ahead and puts the same answer for in a matrix question for all of the attributes. Now, you have to be careful about this because straight liners sometimes are really accurate. I mean, I can tell you I've had like a customer service problem in the past, and then I call in the customer tech support. They solved my problem. They were really nice. They did it fast. And then I get the inevitable, how did we do survey? And I have actually put excellent. John was excellent. So that could be a legitimate response. So what I would say about that is when you see straight liners, flag them and then look at some of the other things on the survey, how they answered them, and that might help you to make a decision about whether that person was actually well-intended or not. The other thing you can do is look at patterns. Now, patterns, might look like this. You remember your SATs, right? Something like that. Now, the only thing about the patterns is that I don't know how many people are really doing this anymore, and it's a little bit difficult to look at a data file, like an Excel spreadsheet of your data, and figure out if someone's done patterns, but I wanted to mention it, as another thing that you can look out for. Another matrix issue, I'm sorry, I don't know why this keeps like skipping pages. Sorry about that. All right, another thing you can do when you're looking at a matrix question or just having a couple different questions in your survey is to look for inconsistency. So one of the things that you might have in your list of attitudes that you want people to agree or not agree with is something like this. Price is the most important thing to me. And then later on, you might say, well, quality is more important than price. You can see they said strongly agree to both of those. Those seem to be contradicting each other. Again, look for other evidence if you're not sure. Maybe someone just didn't read the question, or maybe they think both things are true. I don't know. But don't just automatically throw someone out based on something like this. All right, let's go. Manual detection. Again, so you've got your data, you got your big spreadsheet, and you're starting to clean up the data, starting to look at it, and you're going to again look at a lot of the techniques that they use to keep people out of the panels you can use in order to clean up your own data, and you should. So things like looking for duplicate IP addresses, people that are finishing the survey like 3 a.m, I guess somebody could, but that's a flag. Again, you might have a spike from a particular geography. One of my colleagues told me that he was doing a survey in a state, and there was like this little rinky-dink town that didn't have that high of a population. All of a sudden, he got 10 surveys from that area. So that seemed suspect, right? Well, it was probably not, accurate. The other thing that you can do is look at illogical demographics. We saw this a lot at Nielsen, where you've got someone who says they're like 25 years old, but they have an income of $250,000. So that seems like not really plausible. I suppose it's possible, but just something else to look at and flag. And then I was also doing some research about like, what are bots most likely to use in terms of actually filling out the survey, a PC or a mobile device? And it turns out they're much more prevalent in the PC. Now, I went on and looked and saw there were like 3 different sources where it looks like about half of all surveys are being taken on a mobile device. So that's kind of good. And the mobile devices have more like authenticators and more privacy kind of things. So they're a little bit harder for bots to get in. So another thing to look at is, concentrate. If somebody took the survey by the PC, that means there may be a little more likely to be a bot. So just something else to think about. And then finally, with open-ended analyses. So this can be time consuming, but it really is important that you look at your open ends in detail. And I've had a lot of people that I've had to throw out because of this. So you might have a series of open-ended questions, and then they say the same thing. I love their customer service. Exactly the same with the same punctuation. They just, the same exact response. That's suspect to me. Another thing they do is, and this is real indicative of AI, is if you ask a question like, why do you like brand X so much? They'll say, the reason I like brand X so much is, so they're answering the question with part of the question phraseology, and that to me is really suspect. Another thing is you'll just see a bunch of gobbledygook and nonsense in there. You might see people key smash or just, again, a lot of random letters or words. Those are obvious. Some people might, curse. That's, throw those guys out, obviously. You might have cut and pasted responses, or you might have like AI. Another experience that I had is that we were doing some research in construction, and we were actually able to see verbatim phraseology from the competitor's website, cut and pasted right into our open end about like benefits of that particular brand. So, unfortunately it happens, but something to look at as well. What else do you got here? Oh, there's also these software programs out there called Is It AI? And I wanted to test this because I hadn't really used these very much. So what I did is I took this text over here is actually the little write-up, the description I had for this particular presentation. So I took 3 free of these Is It AI detectors. This one's called Scriber, this one's called GPT-0, and this one's called Just Done. These 2 said 0% AI generated, or probability that's AI generated is 2%. Now I wrote this myself with my own keyboard, so I know that it's real. But this one thought it was 95% AI text generated. So I guess my advice to you is if you're going to use these free services, double check them. I just thought that was a little bit funny. So wanted to just caution you about some of these things. And it really didn't make sense either, because look, it says that it's also using these double checking by these other software programs. So anyway, something to think about. But anyway, so we've gone through, before I get to this conclusion slide, we've gone through trying to get them out of the panel to begin with, so they're not a problem. Second, if they slip through, what we're going to do is we're going to trap them, flag them, and then finally we're going to do a bunch of data scrubbing at the end and look over everything really carefully, and we're going to toss them out because they shouldn't be in there, right, before we start paying out. But I wanted to just sort of give you a conclusion to all of this, which is, again, there's not a silver bullet to any of this stuff. You really have to use your judgment. You don't want to just throw everybody out because they made one little mistake. There are humans, right? That's the beauty of it. You want to try to avoid, false positives on, flagging somebody. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And then, if you really don't know for sure, look for multiple sort of things. Put them, maybe quarantine them, look at them again afterwards. Just be cautious. Don't throw everything out because then you're really going to be spending a lot more money, and you kind of got to give humans a break once in a while, right? All right. So one last thing I wanted to talk about, and that is trying to come up with incentives that aren't just cash or like Amazon gift cards, right? So brainstorming with some other folks, we kind of came up with some ideas. Obviously, donations. Now, I've heard sort of positives and negatives. I've heard one guy told me, like, nobody ever does the donation. They always take the money. Other people said, oh, yeah, they always take it. I do know that there's kind of a generational thing, too, with this. Like the Gen Z folks, they love to volunteer and give to charity, and they're really love to do this kind of thing. So maybe, there's different audiences that are more likely to want to do the donation. But by doing that, you're really taking the sort of honey away from the survey bot because they're not going to get the money, right? The other thing you can give is promo codes. You can do things like swag. One of the folks I talked to said, we have this customer retention program and we do these surveys, these in-depth surveys, and we just give them swag, give them a coffee cup, a ball cap, a t-shirt, whatever. The only problem with that is that, you can't do that with a blind survey, right? Or you could provide swag that doesn't have anything to do with the brand, obviously. Maybe, buy somebody a coffee. Our survey bot's really going to want coffee coupons. The other thing you can do is kind of do sort of a combination of like a coffee and a referral program. Those are some ideas. Feel free in the chat right now to add in your own ideas. One thing that I thought was really interesting, some guy wrote that we should have people paying to take surveys, which I thought was a very unique idea. I don't know how that would work, but if someone, has some ideas about how that might work, please put them in the chat as well. But the main thing is don't just auto incentivize people. Make sure that you're checking and cleaning all the data really well. Make sure you really think they're legitimate. You're going to use that data in your reporting. Once you do that, then release your incentives, but don't do that without checking because that just feeds the problem, right? All right, so I am at the end of our little discussion here. I want to leave some time for Q&A. Got a couple of things though. One, please connect with me on LinkedIn. Number two, if you would like to have a copy of this presentation, I've got my email address there, juliep@accelerantresearch.com. Just go ahead and send me an email. I'll be happy to give you a PDF version of this. If you have questions, obviously you ask them now, or you can reach out to any of us at Accelerant. And then I guess the third thing, this isn't a salesy type presentation, but I did want to mention we do have a proprietary custom panel called Agora that we're very proud of. We spend a lot of time caring and feeding this panel. It's, quality is super important to us, so I just wanted to mention that too. So with that being said, I'm going to toss it back over to Bill, and we're going to answer some of your questions.
Right. Questions for Julie, drop those in the chat, the Q&A. I see that we have one from Deborah. When you have a large number of survey responses, excuse me, what is the balance to avoid manually reviewing so many, but still maintaining quality?
Well, I guess that's sort of up to your own judgment. You could certainly do a random sample, but I think that there are techniques that you can use when you're in Excel that you can highlight certain questions that you think are most likely to be able to give you a flag. I mean, that's what we've done in the past. Our regular practice is as the data comes in on a daily basis, I look at it and then I code it either as, yes, it's good, it's suspect and I want to look further, or it's obviously bad and I'm going to throw it out. So I just code them red, yellow, green, and it makes the rest of the scrutinizing a little bit less time consuming. Again, the other thing you can do is you can just pull the open-ended questions. You can just do a look at the time. Look at some of the techniques that we use and really decide which ones you think would be the best judge of what's good and what's bad. But that's how I've personally done it in the past. And, I guess, it's really up to you.
Yeah, and other questions, feel free to drop them. Even your own experiences, pop them in the Q&A chat. You know, I think, and Julie, you kind of captured this in the presentation, but the spirit of this is like we're all kind of in this together. If you haven't experienced any of these issues thus far, newsflash, they're there. They just haven't made their way to you yet. Yeah, I mean it's kind of terrifying out there, and no matter where you sit in research and insights, you're you're exposed to this. So you're vulnerable, whether you're a provider, a supplier, academic, a corporate researcher, or even end user of research. You need to be aware of the environment and what we're up against here. And it is we've gotten past the point where there's anything that's silver bullet. It takes a multi-method, sort of multi-dimensional approach to battle this, and it is very much an ongoing and unfortunately highly innovative space. Cheating on survey research is just a constant sort of cat and mouse. Like you shut down one avenue and another one is popping up. It's scary out there. So, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. And another
that's
thing I
one
would
way to
add to
grab.
that,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sorry, Bill. The other thing I would add to that is now that you know that this stuff is going on, you'll know what questions to ask your panel company. What are you doing? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? If your boss comes to you, say your CEO comes to you and says, "Hey, I'm giving you, $50,000 to do this market research project, but I've been reading about this stuff in the New York Times about these survey bots. How do I know that they're survey bots?" Well, you have the ammunition now to tell that person, "Hey, these are the things that we're doing. We know how to detect these bots. We're taking these measures." So you're giving integrity to your own projects and your own, work. So that's really important too, is not just that you're doing the work, but also that you're armed with all the knowledge of, hey, you know what's going on now, you know what to look for, you know how to detect them, you can answer those questions. I think that's really empowering, right?
I mean, just being the research grown up in the room, right? Eh, You've got to also, work on the balance of, and you mentioned it several times, Julie, but talking about, just participant experience. It's traps and, filters and automated techniques are emerging and becoming more and more. They're not perfect. And if we're not careful and if we're not checking the checkers, we run the risk potentially of alienating good respondents who are well intended, who just, may fat finger something or may like, not answer in the way that the AI that we're using to try to beat the AI is checking for, right?
Right.
So, I mean, just a lot of just being after it and being on top of this. It's so much fun. It's like you just want to do research, but hey, this is what we have to deal with.
Yeah.
Looks like a few more questions are coming through. We've got Jake asking, have you ever weeded someone out of a survey, refused to compensate them, and then had them come back to you? If so, how do you handle?
I
Um,
personally haven't, but Bill, you probably have had that happen to you, maybe?
yeah, absolutely. And it's they in many cases, the cheaters can be very bold in terms of even, lodging complaints when they know that they are in the wrong. So, to whatever extent you can, and I guess that's the beauty of survey research is that you've got digital receipts of everything. So if you have a strong case for why you are dismissing a given participant, then you can use that. But again, that's, Julie's point about having multiple checkpoints. And just because someone fails one doesn't necessarily mean that they should be booted or not entitled to their, compensation. And it, it's this it depends sort of balancing act, right?
Yeah.
Let's see, we have from Renato, thoughts on protocols between B2B versus consumer surveys.
With regard to like trying to determine if they're bots or not. I mean, I think a lot of the stuff applies. The thing that you're going to have different is that you're not going to use the same checks, right? So with the consumer research, you can look at how they answer the demographic questions and where they live and that kind of stuff. The thing with B2B research that I found really works well are those trap questions, the logic checks. And also putting in the fake brands. Like to give you an example, at Johnson Controls, we did a lot of research on our big giant chillers, right? These are 100,000, hundreds of thousands of dollars, these big giant chillers. And so one of the first questions, that we ask people is what brands have they heard of chillers? And we put like Sears in there. And somebody, answered Sears. I mean, obviously, they don't know what they're talking about. We should, get rid of them. So using the brand names works. And that actually worked in another one I did for construction as well. We were asking about, commercial overhead doors, and we were asking people their top 3 brands of where they've purchased them in the past. So we were talking to architects, right? And they said, Google, or excuse me, they said Amazon or, answered brands like that, which the outlets would be absolutely not available to these people. So using brand to try to detect is a really great way. And also the open ends is a great way on B2B to check people when they're, when you're trying to get people to elicit why they like a certain brand or why they don't. Generally looking at the open ends will give you a really big clue that they're faking it, or it's like AI text, or they're stealing it from another site.
I'll piggyback on one thing with regard to Renato's question on B2B. Also, I think Jim mentions a similar with regard to just super low incidence populations. These are areas that tend to be more attractive to the cheaters, the fakers, because B2B, super low incidence, those are areas that tend to come with the highest incentives, right?
Yeah.
So in my experience, we tend to see a larger proportion of the bad traffic in these basically higher incentive types of populations. So, the due diligence is even more important with these more difficult populations.
Yeah. Yeah. But, the other thing is there's a lot of technical stuff. I mean, that the average bot or person won't be able to answer because you need to be in the industry in order to answer the question. So that's another great indicator too, is just make the questions very specific to that industry. And then it's a lot harder for people to fake.
Biggest recommendation I can give is open dialogue. Talking with your clients, talking with your subcontractors, to the extent that we can all be communicating with one another and trying to go after this. We're at a point in this industry where there should never be any ruffled feathers over someone challenging data that are being produced. So, to the extent that you have to answer for anything that you are delivering, that's that's kind of par for the course. Just checking to see if we have any other questions coming through. I think we are winding down. I know there was a question or two about availability of this presentation for download. Yes, you will have access to both, the PDF slide presentation as well as archived videos, or video rather. Give us a day or two and we'll have those posted for you.
Yeah. On YouTube too, on our YouTube channel.
Yep, indeed.
Yeah.
Julie, it's your forum. So any parting shots that you'd like to give?
Oh, we have another question. Has Accelerant tried any of the software for bot detection? I'll let you field that one, Bill.
Yes. Yeah, multiple. I think it's, there are good ones and there are more emerging, and I think it's important to just assess as many as possible. But again, silver bullets aren't happening, right? Thus far there is not anything that is a one shot. This is going to cure all of it, right? It's important to be hitting this from multiple angles. Yes, the detection, yes, the trick questions, and yes, rolling up your sleeves and getting your hands dirty with regard to like getting into the data, making sure that it's consistent, that it's making sense. But again, that balancing act without like, you know, over engineering your research to the point where you're, watering down your survey product, right? You still do need to, produce good questionnaires to answer strategic questions, and it's challenging.
Yeah. As
But
long as we keep offering money, it's going to be a problem,
indeed, but you have to, right? I mean, we have
Yeah.
to, compensate folks for sharing their time and opinions.
Right.
But if there's money to be had, and certainly if there's not, you know, policing happening, the more and more difficult we make it for these bad actors, the less attractive it becomes, right?
Right.
Why is this happening? Because we as an industry have allowed it to happen, honestly.
Right. All right. We wish you
Times.
great research projects in the future.
Yep.
And a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. Great job,
Bye,
Julie.
everybody.